Yellowstone supervolcano, very unnerving discovery has been made after the Idaho magnitude 6.5 earthquake revealed. We know that out of nowhere we had a Salt Lake City 5.3 earthquake March 18, and then we had an Idaho 6.5 earthquake March 31st towards April 1st, and those quake swarms are still ongoing even today. This is the area of the Idaho quake. Craters of the moon, you can see the lava flows right there. One of the latest volcanic eruptions that took place there was only 660 years ago. This is the area of the mantle plume that feeds Yellowstone, and we'll see the upcoming map showing, look at that 7. That 7 goes, that's a mantle plume going from Baja, going through Salt Lake area, Utah into Yellowstone, and then turning west towards Idaho. And this is it right here. Mantle plume, as you can see the cross section on the right hand side from Baja. This is the cross section that we're looking at, and it goes through Salt Lake into Yellowstone, and you can see that red blotch there halfway between the west coast and Yellowstone. That's right under Idaho. So all that is magma underneath. This is where our 6.5 magnitude earthquake came out of nowhere in Craters of the Moon area, just about 190 miles west of Yellowstone. And it shook all the way up to 700 miles away, up to Manitoba, Canada. It did shake Yellowstone, and we have had updates from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, USGS, Michael Poland, who is in charge, the Professor Michael Poland, telling us what we could expect. And he says, he reveals very unnerving discovery made by USGS after the two recent earthquakes within the region of the supervolcano. The Salt Lake City on a 5.3 on March 18, and then about less than 2 weeks later, March 31st in Idaho. Now, on March 18, the magnitude, it's not 5.3, it was 5.7, sorry. Salt Lake City quake in Utah. And Utah, we know, has 8 volcanoes south of Salt Lake City. Idaho has 9 volcanoes in that area. So the 5.7 Salt Lake City, Utah, which was the state's strongest quake since 1992. Less than 2 weeks later, the magnitude 6.5 earthquake that struck in central Idaho. There were no deaths or major injuries. Of course, there were, we know that the Salt Lake City was felt by over 2 million people, because that's an area that was very soft sediment. It's filled in lake area, Salt Lake City. And the Utah quake, the Idaho quake was in an area that wasn't that populated. It was north of Boise, Idaho. So the 6.5 earthquake struck north of Boise. There were no deaths or injuries recorded by either event, but their nearness to Yellowstone supervolcano made people aware that Yellowstone could have been shaken, of course. And what does that mean? Would that spark some kind of an eruption or an activity, or even a super eruption? Almost 2 months on, USGS is getting calls from concerned members of the public, and who are still, of course, feeling the ground rumbling. And we still have quake swarms there even today, daily, since over a month, obviously. Daily quakes. Professor Poland, Mike Poland, at the start of May, explains why these events could still be felt by those that live near the caldera of Yellowstone. He says, I wanted to address some of the earthquake activity that we've been asked quite a lot about by the public. Some of the earthquakes are ongoing in Idaho and also in Salt Lake City area. Yes, they are ongoing. They're still going because they were big. Now, there was a 5.7 earthquake and a 6.5 in central Idaho, 5.7 Salt Lake, 6.5 Idaho. Professor Poland explains how these aftershocks could continue for quite some time. He says the aftershock sequence are the faults readjusting after these major events, kind of like a house settling in a way. The stress field changes, so the faults have to adjust and you get a lot of these earthquakes that tend to tail off over time, the larger the earthquake, the longer the aftershock sequence can last, he explains. And he says, so in Idaho, we might expect to see aftershocks that are ongoing for a year, at least many months, many months, although this will gradually tail out over time. He also claimed he understood why the public would be worried about the aftershocks, but he states that they were not linked to the Yellowstone caldera itself. He said still very unnerving because most of these events are felt, but they're just aftershock sequences and are not related to any magmatic activity, even though it has the look of a swarm of earthquakes of the type that we see in Yellowstone. These are related to the settling of faults after the events that occurred in mid to late March. Yellowstone volcano gets its nickname, as we know, as a supervolcano because of the capability to inflict a super eruption globally. It's happened 3 times in the past: 2.1 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 630,000 years ago, and leading some to claim it's overdue. It also had a lava eruption 70,000 years ago and 80 smaller eruptions since then. But USGS previously put minds at ease regarding any overdue claims. The Yellowstone Observatory scientist in charge, Jacob Lowenstern, back in 2014 said, when you see people claiming it's overdue, usually the numbers they come up with say the last eruption was 640,000 years ago, but it erupts every 600,000 years. In fact, if you average your eruption intervals 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and then 640,000 years ago, you get an average of something that's over 700,000 years. So in reality, if you try to make this argument, it would not be overdue for another 70,000 years. Now, Michael Pollan in the past had told us that we could have hydrothermal eruptions. In other words, these types of earthquakes could have, because of the resettling of the faults, could have some kind of a change in the effect of the geysers and the hydrothermal plumbing of Yellowstone. In other words, how often the geysers go off and how tall the blasts would be, etc. And this is by Callum Hoare on Express UK. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.